Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there celebrating. I hope you're eating pumpkin, mincemeat, sweet potato, apple with a little raisins in it. Do it all. A la mode is the best way, courtesy of our friends at Wise Markets. Our friends at Maryland Lottery are sending us out on the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. I will have Raven scratch-offs to give away beginning next week. I should be wearing my Coco shirt. We'll be at Coco's next week. Also going to be at Gertrude's at the BMA next week. The entire schedule out at BaltimorePositive.com, as well as this good-looking guy who's not as tired as he usually is on a Tuesday morning out on the front of Baltimore Positive, but late-night football, we sit around and watch football all weekend. Hey, don't blink, dude. They'll be playing again in 48 hours, right? Like all day long Thursday, half the day on Friday. And then the Ravens are going to see the Eagles on short rest on Sunday, but it feels a lot better when you win. It feels a lot better when you're running the ball. It feels a lot better when you can win a game without Roquan Smith. Impressive victory on Monday night. They've had a lot of them, but this is just the latest one. A good win for them.
It definitely was. And I think when you just said it, I expected the Ravens offense to bounce back. Another slow start. You'd like to see this team figure out or get back to coming out of the gate fast, the way they were earlier in the year. They still scored 30 points, so you can't quibble about it too much. But I think for me, when you come into this game on the heels of the Pittsburgh game and the perceived progress there, we talked about it a lot in our pregame conversation. You need to start stacking defensive performances that indicate some progress. And that's not an easy thing when you're missing Roquan Smith and you're looking at the candidates behind him, whether it's Malik Harrison or Christian Welch or Chris Board, more responsibilities for Trenton Simpson. That was shaky. And early in the game, it looked shaky. But you have Malik Harrison step up. He was the primary guy responsible for doing that, led the team in tackles, very physical. Certainly not someone that you look to that's going to shine in pass coverage, but that's most linebackers in today's game. But I was encouraged by seeing this defense settle in after that opening touchdown drive, and you see how that looks. You see how the first quarter looks. I think they gave up 123 yards in the first quarter, and they gave up 162 the rest of the way. I think this was a defense that had given up big play after big play after big play throughout the season to good quarterbacks and bad quarterbacks, good offenses and bad offenses. So to limit the Chargers to 0 plays of 20 or more yards, that's encouraging to me. I think Troy Aikman said it best during the telecast in saying that what we've said for a few years now. This is a Ravens team that's judged by what's going to happen in January, and you're trying to size them up and you're trying to make progress. And obviously you have to qualify and you need to win games. And when you're 7-4, in danger of going 7-5, you can't be thinking about the playoffs as much. But when you go on the road after a road loss in Pittsburgh and you play like that, you improve to 8-4. The signs were positive to me. And for me, it really started on the defensive side of the football because it's one thing to play well at home. We'd seen this team play well at home at times this year. But until these last 2 weeks, you really couldn't point to a single performance on the road where you said, oh, this defense played really, really well for 60 minutes. They've played well for 60 minutes, not perfect football, but they've played well over the last 2 weeks. And for me, that's the formula. They don't need to be elite. They don't need to be the 2000 Ravens or the 2011 Ravens or anything like that. Just be better. Don't give up the big play. Keep it in front of you. Make tackles for the make tackles. Don't miss too many tackles. Don't commit too many penalties. They're still working on that last part, but I was encouraged by what we saw. And you said it. This was a really nice win. 8-4 feels a lot better coming home, knowing you're going to face probably your biggest test of the regular season. The remaining games in the regular season. Pittsburgh as well, of course, but this Philadelphia team's playing as well as anyone in football. So for them to get that win on Monday night, knowing the challenge that they have now on a short week, that said something to me. And I was, like I said, most impressed with how this defense handled not having Roquan Smith on the field.
I think every week we'd like to think that Derrick Henry's going to look like. I mean, you saw Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the guy that's 6'8" and everybody's 5'10", and everybody's trying to tackle him. It certainly felt like men versus boys at various points, and it doesn't always feel that way. It doesn't feel that way on every run when he gets stuffed, but it does feel like when there is some space. And you can get Derrick Henry into space. So much is made in the broadcast of putting Lamar in space, and I'll hear that all day long too. They've been trying that for 7 years to some degree. The idea of both of them in a running attack, even with a team that coming into this, they didn't allow a lot of points. They didn't play great teams, but they've been a stingier defense. Certainly at home, it felt that way early on. Jordan Stout's out there punting early in the game. And the light went on in the running game. And you and I talked so much before Derrick Henry got here, and I was tweeting that he would save them and change them. I think he changes them when they give him a chance. When they're 1st and 20 and 1st and 25, after leg whips, the running game's not the running game at that point. But in 1st and 10, base offense, whatever their base is, and him running and getting 4 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards, and putting them in 2nd and 2, 2nd and 4, 2nd and 1, whatever, or first in the next batch. Moving the change and the running game, I liked what I saw on Monday night in a way that I haven't liked it in a couple of weeks.
Well, I think we talked about it going into the game that this was a Chargers defense that, for as well as they've played, they've been a defense that really likes to play too high. They like to use light boxes. And we talked about how's that going to look against a Ravens offense that figures to test that with Derrick Henry and the running game. And
And
it's
from the
certainly
high camera, the safety comes running up and Henry just runs by him.
right, right. But
Coming up to the line of scrimmage, after snap, post snap, that's not a great plan on Derrick Henry. It really isn't.
well, see, the problem is there's really not a great plan. That's what makes this offense in general, right? I mean, we've seen some teams in recent weeks bottle up Derrick Henry way more. And to your point, when you're in 1st and long and 2nd and long, no one's going to operate well from that. That's why the penalties have been such a big drag for this team on either side of the ball
That's how
at
they
different
lost to the
times.
Steelers last week.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a big reason why. So, but I think when you look at how this game started, they fall behind 10-0. I thought the first 10 minutes of the game or so, they did not match the physicality of the Chargers early in this football game, and that was unnerving to me. Understanding you weren't going to have Roquan Smith on the defensive side and what that could mean, and on the offensive side, because of what we just said, you fall behind 10-0. What's that going to mean for your running game? Are you going to get away from it too quickly, or are you going to continue to commit penalties and be in 1st and long and 2nd and long like they were last week? But I think after those first couple drives, they really settled in and the physicality really started to swing in their favor. I think for Derrick Henry, I'll say this wasn't his best statistical game in terms of just yardage total. And it's the first game all year he did not score a touchdown, of course. But he had a season high 101 yards after contact per Pro Football Focus. They're tracking. I didn't think their run blocking was good. Let me be clear. I'm not saying it was bad, but I thought this was a game where Derrick Henry really took it to another level from a physicality standpoint in getting extra yards and running through tacklers, using two stiff arms on one play. Those types of instances where you have a short yardage play and it looks like you might not pick it up, and he picks it up. So that was great to see. To your point, it was good to see their run game kind of look a little more like it did earlier in the season. Not that it's struggled. I mean, you look at their numbers. I mean, they're number one, right? And they're number one. You kind of look at how they've done there. I mean, the Lions and the Ravens, and then kind of everyone else running the football this year. Throw the Eagles in there as well. Sorry, I should not disrespect Saquon Barkley this week, but I just think Derrick Henry really ran through a lot of tackles, and I think as the game went on, the Ravens were really able to lean against the Chargers team that I still think is good. I don't think this is a case where the Chargers were fraudulent. I just think you saw that the Ravens are a serious contender, and they were. We've known that even after the Pittsburgh loss. I think as frustrating as it was, and you're not ready to write anything off or dismiss any of those possibilities, but I think you saw the Ravens look like a serious contender, getting a really quality win on the road, and really leaning into physicality on both sides of the ball after the slow start. And I think you saw a Chargers team that hadn't really faced anything like this, right? Like going back to 25 years ago, Ray Lewis would always say about the defense, they don't know how fast we are. Brian Billick would say they don't know how fast we are. This offense has a similar mindset from the standpoint of, we've talked about this with Lamar for years. You can prepare for it with a scout team running back or wide receiver playing quarterback, but until it's Lamar Jackson out there, you don't really have a good grasp on how tough it is. Derrick Henry, same thing.
Well, I
Until
think
it's
you see
him,
it when Lamar runs away for defensive tackles and defensive ends in a way that's almost like a fly. You know what I mean? Like flicking a fly. Like you can't catch Lamar in space. And I don't think front sevens in general, linebackers and linemen think I'm fast. I can catch a tight end. I can catch a running back. I can catch maybe even Derrick Henry, if not Keaton Mitchell, some guy that's a sprinter,
right?
right? Catching Lamar in space, even the move he made at the 1 yard line, and I've said to you, be careful because he stops short and doesn't move out of bounds. Now, he was going to score there, but he went down to the 1 yard line. And I don't know, it was a linebacker safety that came, it was a linebacker that came across at the 1 yard line and sort of over pursued. And Lamar just stopped on the hash mark at the 1 yard line and just walked into the end zone
Yeah,
after a linebacker over pursued tremendously. And I think when these guys who do this professionally go back and watch their film of how they played Lamar, everything you're talking about is, I thought I had him.
yeah,
How many defensive linemen, specifically big, strong guys, get in on him and get a hand on him and can't get the ball, him down? He dirts the ball, he eludes them, and they never get a clean shot on him, which it goes back to why I wouldn't have drafted him running into linebackers. Like literally, for
that's why you're
whatever
not a
reason,
GM.
he's like Teflon. Well, there's 31 other GMs that didn't draft him,
Oh, they
only
were
one.
dumb too.
And well, there was 2 years ago where every team in the league could have had him. And look at the Colts
Anyway,
now.
let's
Look at the
not go
Saints.
down that road.
Well, but we'll be doing that for the rest. No, we can go down that road because we can do that the rest of our lives because nobody wanted him, and because I don't know how this showed up on film or doesn't show up on film. I know he makes fools out of Pro Bowl caliber Hendrickson, different guys that get out on him and feel like they have Hubbard, a couple, that they get out on him, and they'll be telling their grandkids about it because they still haven't caught him. He
Yeah,
still hasn't been hit hard in 7 years in the league. He hasn't been Joe Flacco getting hit by Kiko Alonso. He hasn't had that happen in space, and he's always in space, always in space.
not easy to hit a moving target, right? I mean, it's and obviously all it takes is one, but yeah, and I think there was that play at the goal line, which everyone, if you saw it on social media, everyone was putting up the video of him doing that same thing to a kid in high school, right? Same exact thing, and I think that's what's so impressive because you'll see lots of highlights of pro athletes doing things like that in high school because they're that much better. But when you do it in the NFL and you remind yourself, wow, these are the very best in the entire world, and he still does those things. It's amazing. The other play that really stood out to me, I think it was one of their defensive tackles. I think it was Tart, who was unblocked,
Got
and
in.
Lamar
He
just kind
got
of
in.
casually sidestepped him. Casually, it was almost like you could almost see Lamar laughing in real time.
That's
They,
what I'm talking
yeah,
about. That play there is, I get
crazy.
in. I should at least be disruptive. I mean, they should at least
Yeah,
disrupt the
he
play
just
so you don't
sidestepped
have a
him.
successful play. It should at
But
least be an incompletion, if not a sack, if not a stack strip, if not an injured quarterback. It should be something other than 6 points the other way or whatever that play wasn't. But whatever that play was is a positive yardage play.
but this is what makes this offense so incredibly difficult. When you start with that, what Lamar Jackson does physically, what the demands that he puts on a defense, the stress that he puts on the defense, it makes Derrick Henry that much better. It makes their play action passing that much better. It makes their wide receivers and tight ends that much better. It helps their offensive linemen block. Even though, yeah, there'll be some plays where Lamar will scramble into pressure, things like that. We've seen that. There's a cost to doing business with that over the course of 60 minutes, over the course of a 17 game season. But it's he's the centripetal force here. He's what makes everything work, and that's why I wanted to give Derrick Henry some extra props because some of these games where he's put up massive yardage. Go back to the Buffalo game, the very first play. Remember, runs for the touchdown. He wasn't touched on that play, and so much of that just has to do with okay, Buffalo's run defense and a light box, all that. You can say that, but it's because they have to account for Lamar Jackson in the way that other quarterbacks don't put that kind of pressure on you when they're just handing the ball off. So for Derrick Henry, like I said, 101 yards after contact on Monday night, it speaks to not that the blocking was bad, far from it, but it speaks to it was really a game where the Ravens needed to lean on physicality, and they did that, and they did that effectively. And that's something that they didn't do against Pittsburgh nearly as well, in addition to the penalties and all the miscues and all of that. So it was just good to see that. But just in general, going back to the Lamar thing, I mean, they're so difficult to defend because they do so many things so well. And I think that's where, for me, I'm not shocked by what they did offensively on Monday night by any means, because we've seen them do it basically every game except the Pittsburgh game this year. But that's why seeing the defense do what they did, and I keep saying it doesn't have to be an elite defense. It doesn't have to be great. Just be solid. Be solid. Keep the ball in front of you. Don't give up the big play. Don't bust coverages. Don't commit penalties, although they're still committing penalties. But
well, getting off the field on third down is crucial for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but that's a Chargers team that
Chargers had a 3rd and 13 they converted earlier, 3rd and 5 they were converting, and talk about converting Ravens on 4th down from the 16-yard line. I mean, I don't know what the hell he was thinking, but I mean, it worked out. Like, I mean, on a night when bad decisions worked out, I would say.
And
what? even things like when Andrews caught the ball, Jim, I keep saying Harbaugh, the Chargers should have challenged that. I'm not convinced he had possession of the ball on his hip when his foot went out of bounds. No. I'm talking about before the touchdown, early in the game.
Oh,
the first touchdown drive I'm talking about. No, the one where they were disputing whether he had 2 feet in the back.
2 feet, and
you know what I think?
I
think the referee didn't. There were 3 different colors of the turf there.
Okay.
From where the back line was, and there were logos, and I saw it the same way. I'm like, what's the outline? Where's the white? Where's the chalk? Right. Because there were 3 lines where his feet went down in the end zone. Now I'm talking about early in the game, first quarter. There was a play at the sideline where Andrews had sort of possession, sort of not, sort of 1 foot down, sort of 2 feet down. I would have challenged that just to slow the thing down. He had timeouts. It was second quarter. The Ravens still weren't scoring at that point. I thought that was kind of a weird not challenge in the game. But in a general sense, the Ravens did everything they wanted to do once they got going, which is run. But the 4th down, going from the 16-yard line with 2 minutes left to go, like, that was a bad decision. I mean, it worked out, but that would have tipped the field if something would have gone wrong on that 4th down. And they went back, they thought about it. There was a timeout. They come out, they did it anyway. And I'm like, wow,
I wouldn't have done it, but the analytics community has said for years that if it's 4th and 1, like, we're talking 4th and inches. We're not talking 4th and a long one, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. If it's that short yardage, analytics have said for years to go from basically anywhere outside your own 10-yard line. Now, I wouldn't have done that. Let's be clear. I'm not going to sit here and say that I would have, signed off 100%. Oh, let's do it. But a couple factors there. One, if your running game is so important, as you've talked about over and over and over and over, run first, Derrick Henry this, Derrick Henry that, all that. If your running game is that important and that great and that valuable, and you can't pick up that 4th down in inches from anywhere on the field, how important is it then? How good is it then?
They lost the game last week because they couldn't get 2 yards and didn't have Derrick Henry on the field. Short yardage situation at the goal.
Sure. And again, that's a different situation than what we're talking about here. But my point with that is, one, if you have a run game that is as great as you think it is and has looked, use it. And the other factor here, and I think this is where it really plays in. At that point in the game, what the Chargers I think had was it 3 possessions at that point? Touchdown, field goal. You're really wondering how many points they're going to score at that point in time. You're really having trust issues with your defense at that point in time. I think if John Harbaugh knew his defense was going to play the way it did the rest of the game, he probably punched the football there. But at that point, you don't know that, right? I don't think anyone was looking at the game when it was 10-0. I don't think anyone was thinking that the Ravens were going to hold the Chargers to under 20 points until the very last touchdown at the end of the game. So
Well,
I
it
think
also
that was a
wasn't
factor as
likely
well.
points from the 16-yard line. You're not playing about points there. You're playing about we
You're
want to
playing keep
keep the
away.
ball. Right. We want to keep the ball. But if we give the ball up here, it's 7. We're giving the ball on the 10-yard line. As opposed to let's punt it out of here and give them the ball on the other 30 or 35 if we get stout with a good punt. And let's play 2-minute defense and put our defense back on the field. That's what 31 other coaches would have done. That's what, not
Sure.
31 coaches, 1,030. There's no coach in football, Dundalk High, anywhere that would have gone 4th and 1 from the 14-yard line with 2.5 minutes left to go. Like, that's not normal. There's nothing about I've never seen that before. I'll probably never see it again because it probably wasn't a great idea. It worked, and they scored a touchdown, and Henry breaks the play, and because you have that ability. But from a decision-making standpoint, it was screwy.
I mean, sure, that's the easy thing to say, but they scored a touchdown there.
That's
I,
why
I
he's going
mean,
to the Hall of Fame and his brother's
I
not.
mean that's the thing. If we're going to crush the bad decisions, then we have to at least give credit on what works, right? I mean that we have to be fair in that
Sure.
way. Again, would I have done it? No, but at the same time, you kind of look at how they've operated, and in that way, with the fourth down decisions, it kind of reminded me of the 2019 team. It kind of
Well, they
getting back
went
to their
home
roots
because
in
of
that
that
way.
against the Chargers, right? They pulled that crap at home here against the
They
Chargers,
did that all year,
and,
though, Nestor.
they
I
didn't
mean, that
make
was
it.
part
And,
that was
and
part of their
that's the end of their
identity, though.
season, though, right?
Okay, okay, but I hear what you're saying. I'll say
I would just
this.
say circumstances dictate what?
I will.
Circumstances dictated that you should have punted on Monday night. He didn't. He thought about it. He went against the book. I mean, it's John. I mean, this is who he is. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame because of it. I mean, circumstances said don't draft Lamar Jackson with the 32nd pick of the first round because you're going to have to rebuild your whole team. Don't, nobody else wanted him. This is who they are. They're running gun gangsters is who they are at this point. I mean, they do things differently at every turn. And when it doesn't work, we hold our nose and say, you ran the ball 3 times against the Chiefs in a championship game. And when it works on Monday night at the 2-minute warning, Derrick Henry runs left and right. He's a genius, and they're up at halftime all of a sudden.
Yeah, but at the same time, if they do punt there, and let's say the Chargers go down and score a touchdown, I mean, that could be a different game, right? I mean, so sometimes it's no bluster, no muster, right? I mean, I, again, as I said, I would not have done that from my own 16-yard line, but
Find me a coach that would. That's what I'm
oh, they're
saying.
they're
Like you're
you
saying, you
you need to pay more attention to high school football.
high
I just saw.
school. Okay,
Well, you
fine, but
just said there's not a coach, but there are some coaches out there who do not punt ever, like ever, unless
in
it's
the
like 4th and 30.
circumstances of 4th and 1 from the
Oh
16
yeah,
yard line,
I hear
in the
you.
history, in the annals
I'm
of the
not
National
disagreeing with
Football
you.
League, in any sport, in anywhere, it's 0.00001.
Sure,
Like it's not something you do.
but
And
haven't we also seen that swing though that we see teams go for it more on fourth down in general now compared to how it
because of
used to be?
John,
Well,
John
not
started
because of
this
John.
10
I mean,
years
there have
ago.
been other ones. I mean,
But the
coaches are way.
analytics, John was the first one to read the analytics and say, well, I'm going to use that as gospel. We're just going to go for it. I mean, this is not common. I mean, I sit here and watch football all week, and nobody has the level of confidence in their running game or their quarterback's running game.
Philadelphia with the tush push, and that's part of where this is coming from. And let me be clear: the other two fourth down that they went for, I had no problem with those. Those were pretty. I mean, the one, okay, you're still in your own territory, but you see teams do that. But yeah, when you're talking about inside your own 20-yard line, when you're talking about if you get stuffed there, you fumble the ball or anything like that, it's at least 3 points like that. Uh, yeah.
I
That's
just thought the
definitely.
upside was, John. The upside, it's there's 2 minutes of football left here. Do you think you're going to go down and score? If you're feeling good about that, are you feeling good about just burning the clock and getting one more 10 yards or a three and out and then punting with 42 seconds left to go? I don't. The mindset for him, for John, and
It was just
again,
keep
I'm
away
not
at
allowed to
first.
ask John questions anymore because I smell funny. But if I were to ask John about this, John would probably say, well, if we get a yard there, we feel like we're in our 2 minute. We had our timeouts, and we could get 3 points. Now they got seven, but the idea would be, yeah, if we get 1 yard, we're going to keep the ball for the rest of the half,
Yeah.
and we're going to get 3 points. We're going to find a way to get the ball 40 more yards and give Justin Tucker a chance to kick a field goal. That would have been, if Lisa Salters would have gone on in real time and read his mind at that moment, he would have thought, and I think he even said to Lisa Salters on the way in, I just thought we could get a yard. I just thought we
Yeah.
could get a yard. Like in the, what it's going to cost me on the other side. Didn't think about that. 3.7 points, giving them the ball at the 15. I just thought we're good for a yard here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's it's like I said. Now, from your own 16-yard line, okay. Again, I keep saying I would have punted the football there, but don't keep telling me about the running game, the running game, the running game if you don't have the confidence to get 2 inches, right? Which is what it was. But I think it was very obvious their mindset there. That wasn't even about getting 3 points. That was about keeping the ball. It was about keeping the ball for the rest of the half because the next two plays they ran a minute off the clock, right? I mean, they did not go into a full blown
Well, they were
two
80
minute.
yards away from the end zone. They weren't
Right.
thinking score there. To your point, they weren't thinking score there, right? They were thinking
Exactly.
keep the
They
ball.
were
They were
thinking
thinking keep Herbert off the field. Okay.
keep it, and then they got the next first down. And then at that point, okay, then it's and certainly it helps when you throw a 40-yard touchdown to Rashad Bateman, right? It's not as though they ran a 11 play 2 minute drive and we're working the sideline and getting 8, 9, 10 yards a pop and just moving it down the field that way. They got a big two chunk plays, the play to Flowers and then obviously the touchdown to Bateman. So again, it's risky if you don't get it. There's major downside, but there was major upside to that as well. But I still think that was much more indicative of his confidence level in his defense at that point in the game where he did not want to give the Chargers an opportunity to get points there. And he wanted to play keep away and wanted to have an opportunity to, then it was a matter of having a lead, and they still ended up giving up 3 points, at the end of the half. So, in some ways it was kind of justified at that point as far as concern about the defense. But I think, again, if he knew that the Chargers weren't going to score another touchdown until the very end of the game, at that moment, maybe they do punt the football, and maybe he says, "Oh, I am confident in my defense," but he didn't have a crystal ball to know that. So, look, will it burn them at some point in time if they try a similar one to that? It could, or it could be the difference of beating Kansas City on the road. Who knows? So, I say this all the time about opponents when they play the Ravens, but it applies to the Ravens as well. You've got to be willing to take some risks. You have to. You have to take some risks against the Baltimore Ravens to beat them. And on the flip side, if you're the Ravens, there are times you have to take some risks. And John Harbaugh felt that was a time where, yeah, it was a risk because of the place on the field, obviously. But he also said, you know what? What good is my running game and my offensive line and all this talk about how physical we are and having this expansive offense that can beat you in so many different ways if we don't have the conviction to think that we can pick up 5 inches or whatever it was. It was a very, fourth and a very short one. So, we'll see if they do it again at some point in that same circumstance. But it certainly was, it was the play that really swung that game because, they scored a touchdown and then, the Chargers were working from behind the rest of the way.
Luke Jones is Baltimore Luke. He can be found all week long. Don't bother him on Thursday. He's going to be eating turkey and gravy and hanging out with his family and doing all that good stuff this week. You can find me anywhere the internet is sold as well. We're out on Blue Sky Social trying to figure that out. I got locked off of Twitter at one point in the middle of the game because of the maniac that's going to be helping run the country, which really gives me great, great hope for the future of all of this, Elon Musk. But nonetheless, our social media is alive and well. Our website is alive and well. Tons of music stuff out. Done some great interviews. We're doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour 5 times before Christmas. We'll be at Coco's and Gertrude's next week. We will be at Costas the following week, as well as Amici's and our friends at Fadley's at Lexington Market. Have no fear. We're getting back at the State Fair. We'll be back up at Cooper's North as part of our Cup of Super Bowl in February. All of it brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I have Raven scratch-offs to give away beginning next Tuesday at Coco's at 1 p.m. All of it also brought to you by our friends at Liberty Pure Solution. 1-800-CLEAN water, making it happen. And, of course, Jiffy Lube, multi-care, powers Luke up back and forth during a short week. It will power all of those cheesesteak eaters and tasty cake eaters down here on Sunday, taking over the city and gangrene on early Sunday. Tickets are $500. Go enjoy the game. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We got plenty of football ahead. Happy Thanksgiving. We're BaltimorePositive.com.